Hello, my name is Juan Antonio Sanchez, and today's presentation is about um, classical and Japanese art, modern art from Japan. We will be dealing with Hokusai, Hiroshige, who are some of the most important artists in the history of that country. And we will also focus on the importance of nature, okay, the representation of nature, and on the art of these painters and in Japanese art in general. So let's just begin by showing our presentation, and we'll be started in just right away. All right, so here we are. Okay, so in this presentation, I would like to show the connection, okay, of traditional art in Japan with some artistic manifestations such as manga. I'm sure that you are familiar with some of these publications, right? Um, Such as Dragon Ball, okay, One Piece, Naruto, and many others, which are becoming more and more popular among young people and also more adult readers. I wanted to show you a piece of information which I think it's interesting, and this is these are real data. Um, Beginning with the late 2010s, manga started massively outselling American comics. In 2020, the North American manga market was valued at almost $250 million. According to NPD Bookscan, manga made up 76% of overall comics and graphic novel sales in the US in 2021. Okay, so manga is outselling any other comics, even in France, and in Belgium, in obviously in Spain, and in the United States. Manga is popular art, right? And manga didn't wasn't born out of nothing, right? There is a tradition. There is a distinct tradition, that sometimes is left out, right? Okay, intentionally left out or forgotten, that links um, contemporary manga with other artists, of the past in Japan. So they usually say that a contemporary manga was born, after the Second World War. I don't know if you know this author. His name is Osamu Tezuka, and he's called the god of manga. He's usually known as the god of manga. Why? Because of his really relevant manga production, and because he was actually the origin, okay, of what we know as modern manga. Okay, Um, excuse me. Osamu Tezuka began his career in right after the Second World War in 1947 with this book called New Treasure Island, okay, which was based on the book by Stevenson, but with kind of style of artistic style very close to Disney, right? And it was Disney that was the first and most important influence in the early career of Osamu Tezuka. One of his first characters was Astro Boy. Astro Boy, and here you can see the similarities between Astro Boy and Mickey Mouse, and how the big eyes that are very characteristic of manga nowadays, right? Um, uh, mm, were inspired, right, to a great extent, okay, by the characters, okay, created by Disney, right? When he was a kid, Samu Tezuka watched Bambi, and he was blown away by the movie. He saw it mm, seven or eight times, in a row, and he was really he really loved the movie and the animated movie, and those characteristic, big eyes, were to be present, in the work of Osamu Tezuka, and then in the um, mm, um, um, work of other artists, right? Some people say that he was also Osamu Tezuka was also influenced by such characters as Betty Boop, and her big eyes, in the creation of Astro Boy and some other characters of his, right? Um, but the Disney impact is undeniable, right? On the drawings, on the first drawings of Osamu Tezuka. By the way, um, if you want to know something about the inspiration that produced, you know, the character of Betty Boop, um, she was inspired, by an actress uh, with the characteristic look, called Helen Kane. Let's continue. So this is what typical manga girl looks like nowadays, right? And in the 21st century, right? Now, if we have a look at traditional Japanese art, okay, we find this kind of painting, of drawings or artistic works. Now, so how do we go, okay, from this kind of paintings to, hold on a second, to the previous one, right? From here to here. And to what extent this would be a precedent of manga? Well, it is, to some extent, because this print, okay, this image is sort of vignette, right? Okay, it's representation of a moment, you know, in the life of some people, and every character in this picture has her own story. There's a woman with her kid. There's a person who has just arrived. There are two girls talking. Another person who's leaving the place. There's even a man, on the um, left, top left corner, Um, so there is a story to this vignette, right? Okay, the same as there is a storyline, in every book of manga that you can buy. We could also add to that, you know, the fact that um, the artist use uh, mm, plain colors, the drawing line is really important, more than the painting and itself. So there are lots of relationships, between traditional art, and in Japan, and contemporary manga. Now, what kind of print is this? Now, this print belongs to a movement called ukiyo-e. Okay, ukiyo-e, okay, was an artistic manifestation that took place in the Edo period. Okay, the Edo period in Japan took place between 1603 and 1868. All right, and at that time, ukiyo-e flourished, and basically, from a technical point of view, ukiyo-e works of arts are woodblock prints, right? And I just wanted to explain or to show you how these prints were made. Um, Now, I'm sure that you have seen some point in your life the Great Wave of Kanagawa by Katsushika Hokusai. Right, this is the most famous work by Hokusai. Right, um, we're going to talk about this image in a minute, but let's just see how this print, okay, what this kind of prints were produced, right? So Hokusai or any other ukiyo-e artist would draw, okay, sometimes paint, right, on paper, an image. Then he would take it to an engraver, okay, and the engraver would um, reproduce, okay, the drawing, okay, on a wood block, right? Right, okay, and the original piece, okay, of art would be lost, right? Um, then another person would add some pigments and color to the wood block or different wood blocks, okay, to make just or to produce just one final work of art, and he or another person or she or another person would print, okay, right, the final work, right, um, pushing a piece of paper onto the wood block, which had been previously colored, right? And That was like the method that Japanese artists used to sell their work, because they could produce um, hundreds and thousands, sorry, of um, of um, reproductions of their work, from just one single image, right? And this ukiyo-e, right? Um, this is yes, uh, okay. Um, Here you can see the whole process, right? Okay, from the painting, the creation of the image, okay, to their final reproduction, multiple reproduction, okay, of the original image. Okay. Now, the first important ukiyo-e artist was called Hishikawa Moronobu. He lived in the 1600, right? And he began to produce works such as this one. Okay, these were black and white um, 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 works, right, with a story. Each of these images have their own story. Here you would have like a man courting a lady, okay, samurai talking to a lady. Here you have a procession of uh, prostitutes, right? Okay, right, and they're walking around, okay, with these uh, sort of umbrellas, and again, each character, okay, has a different pose, right? Uh, there's a woman with apparently her daughter. There are two courtesans or prostitutes talking. You have the samurais, okay, some other women on the background. So this is the storyline, that is, underlying each of these single vignettes, and that connects them to um, modern popular uh, art in Japan. Um, these ukiyo-e prints could be sold separately, or they could be printed, in the sort of books, right? So the kibiyoshi that began to be published in the 1700 can be considered the first manga books. There is an interaction between text and images, and when some historians of manga uh, mm, discuss the birth of contemporary comics in Japan, they usually talk about this um, these books, these illustrated books. Now, moving step forward, okay, we run into the period of production of Nishikie, which is basically an ukiyo-e with colors, right? Now, the most important creator of this period was Suzuki Harunobu. He lived in the 1700, right? And he made things like this. Again, you have like a lady, right? And you have a servant, right? And one is reading a kind of a letter to the other. Again, relationship between the text and um, the picture, and could well be, I mean, it was made in 1700, but it could well be considered, um, a vignette or part of a comic strip, in um, in um, in a newspaper, or in a published book. Um, there are very many ukiyo-e artists. We are just going to have a look at some of them. Sharaku was active just 1 or 2 years, in the at the end of the 18th century. But he became famous for portraying actors, right? And although his production is not really uh, huge, it's reduced, limited, and we don't know very much about his life. You know, this kind of reproductions, um, very expressive, um, and powerful, were also very well known in his lifetime. Now, um, if we mm, mm, try to find the reasons why ukiyo-e was born in the 1600s, 1700s in Japan, in the Edo period, we would have to talk about the rise of a middle class in Japan, the same as in Europe. We find the creation of the bourgeoisie. Well, a similar thing happened in Japan, and this middle class, okay, um, um, needed, okay, to be to some extent portrayed, and at the same time were the main consumers of these prints produced by the ukiyo-e artists. Now, the focal point of creativity and of creation of these ukiyo-e works of arts were um, districts of pleasure, located in different big cities in Japan. For example, Yoshiwara, which was located in Tokyo. And in Yoshiwara, and other neighborhoods, similar neighborhoods in other important cities of Japan. There was a red light district. There was prostitution. I mean, we have seen um, 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 an engraving with courtesans, with prostitutes. But there were also theaters. There were places where they played music. And the ukiyo-e artists were, linked to this atmosphere and these districts, where they could market their work, and where they received, um, some orders, or some, they could get jobs, to work on these prints. Okay, this is an image of Yoshiwara by Hiroshige. We will talk about Hiroshige in a minute. And as I said, the most important representative of ukiyo-e is Katsushika Hokusai. He's considered the best artist in the history of Japan. He was born in 1760 and he died in 18 1949. Now, Kazushika Hokusai reproduced different kinds of landscapes. He liked to portray the natural world in a Japanese fashion, right? In the fashion of Japanese traditional Japanese art. Um, Very simple portraits, but at the same time, full of meaning, full of symbols, full of spirituality, right? Which tell us about the importance, that that Japanese culture has traditionally given to nature and to the respect that the Japanese have always felt for nature. So here you have like a typical ukiyo-e printing, and then you have like the Great Wave of Kanagawa. Now, this is the most famous work by Katsushika Hokusai. Why? Why do you think that this image has become so well known, not only in Japan, but in the world and in the history of world art? Now, this is one of the images included in Hokusai's book, 36 Views of Mount Fuji. Okay, Mount Fuji is the volcano which is located next to Tokyo. And Mount Fuji is what you see on the background of this picture. And then the Great Wave of Kanagawa, right? But as you can see, there are different waves here, right? There is like the biggest one, okay, with its claws ready to fall on the boats with men. And this is a kind of a dramatic or tragic picture, right? Because these men are about to die, or at least some of them, or many of them are about to die, right? Okay. Then on the foreground, you have another wave, which is basically a copy of the Mount Fuji, which is on the background, right? So what is Hokusai trying to say? I mean, he's reflecting on nature itself, right? Nature can be beautiful, can be something imposing, something attractive, but at the same time can be really cruel, right? And dangerous. And that's what the Mount Fuji stands for. It is really um, place full of mysticism, but it can be uh, um, very risky, uh, as any volcano is, right? Okay, so yeah, here we have like man fighting against nature, and this ambivalent face of nature itself, right? Now, the Great Wave of Kanagawa has become so famous, since it was first produced, that Many people have copied it, and have made different versions of the image, in a comic fashion. It has been put on different objects, even on banknotes. Excuse me. On comics, with the Cookie Monster. It's one of those work of arts, that is part of the um, artistic heritage of the whole world. All right, and we should say that Hokusai um, painted these waves, uh, worked on these waves, drew this wave in different um, um, images, right? Okay, such as this one, where the foam on the wave of the wave kind of becomes transformed, you know, in birds, right? Now, in these 36 views of Mount Fuji, you get different images of this um, symbolic mountain. Right? For example, this is one of the most famous ones, like with reddish hues, and you would say, I mean, like a volcano cannot be cannot hold those colors, yeah, but it can, because at some points of the day, the the Mount Fuji, looks red because of the sun lights, So different takes on Mount Fuji, right? Different colors too, and and um, and some interesting versions, of the same object, right? Okay, which Hokusai felt passionate about, right? Okay. Hokusai manga. Hokusai published a series of books, um, intended to be kind of self-help, um, self-study books for people who wanted to learn to draw, right? And Hokusai um, made the word manga famous, with the publication of this series of books, right? The word manga existed before, it's kind of, manga means like a kind of a sketch, right? Okay, simple sketch. But from the publication of these books, right, it is when people began to talk about manga, right? Okay. And in uh, these books, okay, Hokusai basically portrays reality, right? He um, he represents, for example, different aspects of nature, flowers, right, grass, right, bushes, right, with a very realistic, okay, um, technique, okay, but at the same time being able to capture the essence, of things, right, and of animals, of insects, of reptiles, of snails, right, right, um, spiders, flies, okay, etc., etc., right? Gain the reproduction of nature. right? Octopus, turtles, fish, right? Okay. Anything was interesting, you know, to be drawn, okay, from the point of view of Hokusai, from his perspective, the architecture, right, the human body, right, like in these sumo wrestlers, different um, mm, positions, poses, right, of the body. Sports, daily scenes, okay, mm, jobs, professions, and a sense of humor. Now, this is important, right? Hokusai had um, um, uh, an acute, let's say, sense of humor. Here, you may think that Hokusai was like portraying, a symbolic face, of a person who is like moving around and so on. But if you have a look at the third figure, right, on the page on the left, you will see, okay, you will notice that this is a man with a hat, okay, and what you may think that it's a face is just a hat, okay, thing from above, So um, um, there's a sense of humor that it's worth noticing, in Hokusai, and also the beginning of consecutive vignettes, right, to make up a story, right? Um, uh, More ironic, situations, and also, I mean, he didn't just portray life as it is, but he also fantasized about life itself, and he um, he materialized, in his drawings and his paintings, some of the stories, and some of the characters of the ghost stories, that were popular in Japan, from many centuries ago, right? So you can see like these semi monsters, that are not very far away from those that you can see in manga nowadays, right? You see, right? So Hokusai was very prolific, right? This is a very famous work that he finished soon after he died, right? He also portrayed erotic scenes, in the traditional shunga fashion, right? And we will see more of this later on. And this is just a quote by Katsushika Hokusai that I think it's worth reading, right? He says, he said, from the age of 5, I had a mania for drawing the shapes of things. When I was 50, I had published a universe of designs. But all I have done before the age of 70 is not worth bothering with. At 75, I have learned something of the pattern of nature, of animals, of plants, of trees, birds, fish, and insects. When I am 80, okay, you will see real progress. At 90, I shall have cut my way deeply into the mystery of life itself. At 100, I shall be a marvelous artist. At 110, everything I create, a dot, a line, will jump into life as never before. To all of you who are going to live as long as I do, I promise to keep my word. I'm writing this in my old age. I used to call myself Hokusai, but today I sign myself the old man mad about drawing. Okay, so I think this is kind of a typical and curious, quote, um, by Hokusai, okay, portraying himself as an artist, who has done nothing valuable, until, you know, his 70s, right? Okay, and the projection of the things that he wanted to do, in the future. So Hiroshige was also master of ukiyo-e. He was a little bit younger than uh, Hokusai, and he was influenced by Hokusai, right? For example, in the representation of nature, okay. So he portrayed again different takes on natural natural settings or scenes. He was especially good using whites and and blues, representing winter settings, right? Okay, and also original, okay, um, images with animals, right? Okay, so the natural world was always there, in all these ukiyo-e artists. We're just going to have a look at some other artists very briefly, like Utamaro, who was famous for his representation of ladies, right? Um, Shikanobu, like a more recent um, artist of ukiyo-e, like in the late 19th century. But I encourage you, if you are interested in this kind of art, to have a look at some other artists, because there are very many, and each one with his or her different artistic style. I also wanted to briefly talk about the influence of Japanese art on European art. I told you that during the Edo period, Japan was closed to the world, and and uh, in the mid 19th century, the United States forced Japan to open their borders, and that's when Japanese art begins to be exported, right, or travels to Europe, right? So in the last decades of the 19th century, in the 1800s, the European artists are blown away by the art of Hokusai, Hiroshige, and many other and Japanese artists, right? And a current called Japonism, the influence of of um, Japanese ukiyo-e prints is born, especially in France, right? Okay, so you have some people like Claude Monet, okay, who inspired by Hokusai and his 36 views of Mount Fuji. This is Monet too. Edgar Degas, also influenced by the human figures made in Hokusai manga, Toulouse-Lautrec, and especially Van Gogh. Okay, Van Gogh was really, really influenced by Japanese art, right? And some of his most famous pictures, okay, show that influence, right? Now, here you have a print by Hiroshige on the left, and then you have the reproduction of Van Gogh on the right, right? And as I say, you'll know that Van Gogh is well known by his drawing and painting of flowers, right? Okay, and there is like um, direct line, between the work of Japanese ukiyo-e artists, and the pictures by Van Gogh, right? So to some extent, like these impressionists and post-impressionists, who were like the presidents, of the modernist art, artists that's, a modernist art that came right after them, Picasso and many others, were were inspired, by Japanese art, So Japanese art is also um, part of the origin, of all the changes that European contemporary art was going to um, go through, right? Gustav Klimt, um, even Debussy, right? When he published, when he created a composition called La Mer, copied the Great Wave of Kanagawa, Art Nouveau, okay, had a big influence, of Japanese art, some artists such as the Czech Alphonse Mucha, right, okay? And it's interesting because then all these um, mm, works of art, would at the same time have an influence on contemporary manga, right? So the influence goes both ways, right? First from Japan to Art Nouveau, and then from Art Nouveau to contemporary Japanese comics such as this one, right? And yeah, like in the last decades of the 19th century, um, um, ukiyo-e was not as powerful, among other things, the photography was invented, um, uh, uh, European art became a big influence in Japan. But at the beginning of in the first half of the 20th century, some artists got inspired, by ukiyo-e prints and continued the tradition of ukiyo-e, right? And this is interesting, because some creators such as Kawase, you know, um, uses the same old techniques of Hokusai, Hiroshige, and other artists, like as we said, plain colors, like strong drawing lines, and etc. in works like these ones, Also, Hiroshi Yoshida, right? Okay. And what's interesting about this is that if you look closely, into these works of art, they very much look like um, um, contemporary animated movies of the 20th century, right? Okay, images like these ones, right? Have a look at a movie by Miyazaki, right? Or some other movies, or series. right? Animated series, right? So again, the connection of ukiyo-e, with manga and with animation, right? In the 21st century, there are some artists who keep doing ukiyo-e, okay? But they basically take care of the whole process. They create the original image, they do the carving of the woodblock, right? They print, you know, with colors, the final uh, works of art. So ukiyo-e is still alive, right? Okay. And finally, I just wanted to mention, that the relationship of Hokusai and Spain. There are some facts and then some people, okay, whose lives were determined to to a great extent by Japanese art. Talking about this man, for example. Okay, this man is Ernest Francisco Fenollosa. Okay, his family came from Malaga, right? And he was a very prestigious intellectual in the second half of the 19th century, the first decade of the 20th century, and one of the most important, relevant Orientalists in the United States and in the whole world. Right? He was decorated by the Emperor of Japan for his work in Japan, and he also worked in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, right? And he was a very important scholar, right, and researcher. All right, okay. And finally, another, well, this is a quote by Ernest Francisco Fenollosa. Hokusai is a great designer. As Kipling and Whitman are great poets, he has been called the Dickens of Japan. All right. As and as I was saying, the influence of Hokusai on Picasso. All right. Now, you see the direct influence of works of art by Hokusai on some um, paintings by Picasso. For example, this one, like the horse, both horses, are basically in the same position, and the donkey on the work by Hokusai has the same pose, reverse pose as the faun in the painting by Picasso. In the background you have like the sea and the waves, right? And uh, even mm, in the Guernica, right? Okay. Now this uh, mm, horse is very similar to this one, right? Okay. So this can be researched um, and like more deeply, the influence of Japanese painting, and in pictures like a Guernica. And Guernica is also um, was also created, with very similar uh, drawing techniques. I mean, we could argue that the Guernica is like a, a big vignette, right? Okay, a wonderful vignette, right, of contemporary art, right? Shunga art, right, that we mentioned, erotic, sexual representations, right? that have an influence on some engravings, right, and paintings by Picasso, especially The Dream of the Fisherman's Wife, right, another very famous work of art by Hokusai, right, that will be reproduced, okay, using his own imagination by Picasso in some of his of his um, of his works, right? So as you can see, there's a connection between Hokusai and Picasso. Some recommendations to finish off this presentation. If you want to continue studying ukiyo-e and especially Hokusai and Hiroshige, you can have a look at the books published by Suso Maurelo in Spanish. All right. Okay. There are some pictures about the life of Hokusai, and I would recommend this manga called Hokusai, um, created by Shotaro Ishinomori. Now we mentioned Osamu Tezuka as the god of manga. Ishinomori is called the king of manga, right? And he wrote this, he created this biography of of Hokusai made in comics. There's also an animated movie um, on the life of uh, Hokusai's daughter, who was also an artist. And basically, this is the end of our presentation, okay, where we have presented the work of some masters of ukiyo-e, such as Hokusai and Hiroshige. And we have also focused on the importance, of the representation of nature, the respect, you know, that these artists and in general Japanese culture have for nature, and the need to protect nature, which is to some extent very related to the contemporary ideas of sustainability, and protection of nature that we have nowadays, right? And basically, yes, basically that's all. So so thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the talk and you learned a little bit about Japanese art. And see you later.